We're here to bring a new type of news show.
New insights, new styles, and new topics every day.
We are News Generation.
Bringing news just for you. It's Wednesday, March 18th here in Seoul. I'm Isujin, and this is News Generation. Joining us today is Brooke.
Hello, thank you for having me.
For coming in. Also, Key's with us.
Good morning.
Good morning. And both are here to speak on behalf of people in their 20s and 30s. So we're in the middle of the work week, and if you felt like your wallet is thinner than usual this week, you're definitely not alone. In this era of high inflation, every trip to the grocery store, every utility bill, even a simple cup of coffee seems to cost more than it did just months ago. And for many, cutting back is no longer a choice, it's a necessity. So the question is, what areas do you try to spend less on, Brooke?
Well, I did notice yesterday when I was going to order delivery that one of my favorite foods had gone up by a couple of dollars.
No.
So I do think we're all kind of feeling that. So personally, I try to cut back on certain things so that I can have money for the things that I really enjoy, like skins in video games or my favorite, Labubu's.
That is so cute.
This is another thing I spent money on that maybe I didn't necessarily need to, but it's something that I like. So in order to have the funds for those kinds of fun purchases, I have to be sure that I don't spend too much in other areas. So I do try to be as frugal as I can in my daily life. For example, I don't buy clothing very often. And if I buy or I make food, I can make it last a really long time. I portion it out and I love leftovers, so nothing goes to waste. I'm also a big fan of searching out sales and discounts. So whenever I'm searching for a product, I do a ton of research and I try to find the cheapest option that's also the best quality for that price. So that's how I can manage to spend money on fun, cute things like that.
It's so funny and also so sad how relatable that is, that you have to pick and choose.
Yes.
What about you, Key?
Well, my wallet has never been fat, it's always been thin. So literally everything I can, I try to cut it down, especially with my kid growing. And used to spend a lot on socializing with people, going out, having drinks with friends and my seniors or juniors, buying good food and expensive liquors, and my toys, of course, lots of Legos. But nowadays I try to spend less, and even with cooking, cooking used to be my meditation. So I spend a lot of time and I spend a lot on ingredients, but nowadays I spend less on ingredients. No more Hanu or Korean beef, no more truffles or caviar. Just anything that would fill up my stomach would be enough for me, and just gotta go on a diet.
I mean, it's really telling how even something as personal as cooking, which used to be a form of relaxation, is now shaped by financial pressure. So we're going to talk more about this, but first, let's take a look at the screen. It almost feels like we've been living with high prices forever. From groceries to rent to a simple night out, the cost of everyday life keeps climbing, and for many, cutting back has become the new normal. In fact, the areas where people are tightening the belt are creating entirely new trends, including more people choosing to opt out of traditional weddings altogether. Today on News Generation, we take a closer look at how people are saving money, the small but meaningful joys they're holding onto, and the smarter spending strategies helping them navigate this high-cost era. Just as we saw in a video, high prices are reshaping not just spending habits, but life's biggest milestones. So one of the most striking shifts that is happening around these days is our weddings. So how are millennials and Gen Zs creating new trends to fight inflation?
Sure. So one of the biggest trends making headlines right now is no wedding phenomena. So it goes beyond just simply scaling down the ceremonies. More couples are choosing not having wedding at all. In fact, a recent survey found out that 4 out of 10 people said that they would be open to foregoing a wedding ceremony entirely as long as both partners agree. There are several factors behind this shift, but the most significant one is, of course, the cost. Wedding expenses have surged dramatically. For instance, the average cost per guest for wedding halls in Gangnam Gangnam area, this is southern part of Seoul, has recently exceeded 90,000 won, nearly double what it was before the COVID pandemic. And when talking about a prestigious hotel, the minimum started at 200,000 won, but now is well over 250,000 won, adding burden to the couples. When you add the venue rental fees, photography packages, and the so-called 스드메 or studio dress makeup bundles, total cost can easily reach tens of millions of won. And as a result, a growing number of millennials and Gen Z couples are deciding to make it more sense to invest that money into their honeymoon or housing rather than spending all in a single day.
So skipping the ceremony altogether, that's a dramatic shift from tradition. But when a single day can cost that much money, it's no surprise priorities are changing. And this isn't just happening in Korea. Similar movements are emerging overseas. So how are other countries seeing people also opt out of wedding ceremonies altogether, Brooke?
Yes, it is happening in other places. In fact, a similar trend started in the US a few years ago, where many couples began having what are called micro weddings. So what this means is that they invite fewer than about 50 guests in order to reduce costs. And some people are also buying wedding dresses or tuxedos online at lower prices because, as we know, a wedding dress can really be one of the biggest expenses of a wedding. Some people are even using secondhand items to cut down on that expense. Rings are another example of something that can really hurt your wallet. So recently, lab-grown diamonds have become a popular and more affordable option. And then taking us to Japan, there are similar trends being seen there as well. It's called nashikon, where couples simply register their marriage without holding a formal wedding ceremony. And this reminds me of courthouse weddings in the United States, where you just go to the court and you get whatever paperwork you need, but there's no fanfare, there's no huge ceremony. People in the US also go to Vegas sometimes for a very, quick and affordable wedding. So we are seeing younger people turn to these more affordable options rather than the huge weddings that can really be a hard hit financially.
And you also see celebrities, they're doing it for different reasons, obviously, do that as well. It seems fun. So from micro weddings to lab-grown diamonds, it's clear that practicality is replacing extravagance across different cultures. But of course, trends are one thing, but personal choices can be a bit different. So would you personally consider not having a wedding?
Well, I've already done it, so I can't go back and change my past, but I would still do some sort of ceremony. I did actually consider having a small wedding, and I got married before the COVID, but still the cost was very, very expensive. And when I was considering having a small wedding, the problem was making a guest list, who I was going to invite or not. So I ended up having a big wedding, like having 700, 800 guests. But then luckily I had some help in the sponsorships, so I didn't have to pay for a dress or makeup or tuxedo, picture shoots, the venue. But I would respect it if anyone chooses not to have a wedding at all, because for the wedding, it means something more than that.
Yeah, I think obviously sponsorships aren't an option for everyone. I think in a lot of cases, people have to pick and choose. Exactly. Are we going to invite everyone we want, or are we going to have a smaller wedding? So is a small ceremony, in your opinion, worth it, or would you rather skip it altogether for practicality?
Well, I don't know if I've even met 700 or 800 people in my lifetime, so I think my wedding would be quite small. I keep a small circle of friends, and my family's pretty small too, so I don't think it would be that expensive for me. And also, I've been dreaming of my wedding since I was a little girl. So for me, I don't think I could skip the ceremony. And for some people, that is the case. A wedding to them is this sort of once in a lifetime event that they've been fantasizing about. So even if it's a small micro wedding, they might still want to have that ceremony just to celebrate with their family and close friends. But for others, skipping the ceremony and putting that money towards something more practical, like traveling or a home, might make more sense, because like we've been talking about, the cost of a wedding can sometimes be the same or even more than buying something like a house to live in. So I think both choices can be valid. It all really depends on what matters most to the couple and if they both agree on what their long-term goals are.
Right, there's so many things to spend on, and everything's so expensive, so you really have to pick and choose. So weddings aren't the only area where millennials and Gen Zs are rethinking big spending. So what other spending habits are changing, Keith?
Well, another notable shift is that we're seeing younger generations are not buying brand new cars. Instead, they're buying used ones. In fact, the share of new car registrations last year fell its lowest level in a decade. What's particularly interesting is the contrast across the age group. While car owners in their 60s and 70s are accounting for the growing number and share of new car purchases each year, the proportion among the young people in their 20s and 30s has continued to decline, hitting a 10-year low. There are a couple of key reasons behind this trend. First, the financial burden. The car prices have risen significantly, making it increasingly difficult for younger consumers to afford a new vehicle, which is very true. And at the same time, the rapid expansion of car sharing services is changing the way people think about the ownership. For many, the younger generation, access is becoming more important than ownership, reducing the need to buy a car altogether. You don't have to worry about the parking. It's way more practical and economical because you can book the car whenever you need it, and you can get easy access. All you need to do is just book it on your smartphone, so it's much easier.
Right. So, I mean, it's a huge generational shift from owning a car as a status symbol to seeing it as more of a burden financially. And even everyday spending habits are evolving. So is this frugality turning into kind of like a lifestyle movement these days?
Definitely. We're seeing in the United States, there's this trend called the No Buy Year Challenge, and it's gained a lot of attention since last year. It's similar to Korea's No Spending Challenge, and the goal is to avoid unnecessary purchases for an entire year except for essential items, which sounds...
No laboo-boos.
No laboo-boos. It sounds like a very challenging idea, but it's to reduce impulse buying, and it's meant to make sure that you focus only on what you truly need as the cost of living continues to rise. And we're seeing a similar mindset spreading among younger consumers in Korea as well. So if you take a look at the screen, I'll take you through some numbers here. According to the 2024 Korean Consumption Trends Outlook by the Korea Broadcast Advertising Corporation, about 81% of people say they are limiting spending to essential items and avoiding unnecessary purchases, while nearly 90% say practical consumption is more important than spending simply to show off. This is also known as conspicuous consumption. And these results show how younger consumers are shifting toward more practical and intentional spending habits. I was pretty surprised by how high those numbers are. It's pretty encouraging. I think a lot of younger people have different priorities these days.
So it's not just about cutting back. It's about redefining what truly matters to young people. In a high-cost era, practical consumption is becoming a value statement, not really seen as a sacrifice. So we also want to hear directly from our viewers. So we ran a poll on the IDN News YouTube channel asking, even if you need to save money, what can't you give up? So here's what the results showed. So a clear majority, 70%, say they refuse to compromise on good, high-quality food, showing that well-being and everyday satisfaction still come first. Meanwhile, 13% say they can't give up travel, valuing experiences despite financial pressure. 10% continue to prioritize spending on appearance, such as clothes and accessories, while 7% say staying up to date with the latest IT devices is something they're not willing to sacrifice. So for me, like 70% choosing food, I am personally not surprised at all, and I am probably in that group. So I personally think you can come back on shopping or really upgrading your phone, but compromise on what you eat every single day just hits different. It also seems really sad. And to gain a broader perspective on this, we're going to talk to a university student from a different country. And that conversation will take place right after the break, so don't go anywhere.
NewsGen wants to hear from you. Go to YouTube and search out Channel Arirang News. Click Posts. And cast your vote in the poll. Make a new type of news with us.
Joining us today is Julia, a university student from Japan who likes to find practical ways to save money. So hello, Julia. Thank you so much for connecting with us today.
Thank you for having me.
So Julia, how are you cutting living costs at this time of high inflation?
Yeah, I wouldn't say I'm overly particular about it, but I do try to stick to simple habits. So, for example, turning off the lights when I leave a room or avoiding letting water run unnecessarily. Also, in terms of grocery shopping, I like to purchase my fruits and vegetables at produce markets because it's more fresh. But at the same time, I think it tends to be cheaper than normal supermarkets. And one final thing that I would like to say is that I enjoy cooking, so I cook most of my meals at home, which might naturally help me keep these daily expenses low.
So, what money-saving trends are popular among Gen Z in Japan?
I've noticed these young individuals have become more careful about how they spend money. Some of my friends would walk longer distances to go to a cheaper supermarket, or even choose to walk to their destination if it's just one train stop away to cut on transportation costs. But as you mentioned, I've seen the trend of nashikon, where people choose not to have wedding ceremonies, and I think it reflects how the younger generation sees and thinks about these traditional events and expenses as they become more selective of what they define as necessary to them. And similarly, instead of owning a car, many young people are turning to car sharing services where they can rent a vehicle nearby only when they need it rather than committing to purchasing one. But at the same time, I think it's not just about saving money because I've also seen this shift toward trying to expand or increase their money. And so investment programs that are easy to start have become more popular amongst young Japanese individuals. I think the trend is not just about cutting money, but being more thoughtful or intentional in how money is managed.
Well, I'm very inspired by you saying that you cook at home almost every day. I think that's a great tip for anyone trying to cut back a little bit. So what other money-saving tips would you personally like to share?
I think one simple tip is to build small habits that add up. I carry a reusable water bottle. I've noticed that a lot of my friends did that in the US when I was studying in the US last year, but not as much amongst my friends in Japan. And it ends up being both cost effective and environmentally friendly. So I'd recommend making this a habit. Also, for example, making a shopping list before going out because it helps prevent impulsive purchases. And when it comes to shopping for food, maybe opting for private label products could help. And for non-essential items, maybe buying secondhand items is a great option, not just for saving money, but because it has become a more popular and sustainable choice amongst young people. Another point I would like to mention is tracking your spending. So with cashless payments becoming more common, yes, it's definitely more convenient, but it's easy to lose track of how much you're actually spending. So using a budgeting app or keeping a simple expense log might help. And finally, one thing I would like to note is in Japan, although there are slight movements towards raising wages, I see that many individuals are concerned that these raising prices are outpacing the wage growth. And I guess in such an environment, it is easy to feel anxious about spending or the future of your finances. But I think it's important to remember that budgeting isn't solely about restricting yourself completely. And at the end of the day, there are necessary expenses, which are things that we can't simply stop buying even if the prices increase. So I think the key is to allocate your money wisely, making thoughtful and balanced decisions with your spending while still allowing yourself to enjoy life. And personally, I would like to see the optimistic side and think of it more as smart budgeting rather than just cutting costs.
I fully agree with pretty much everything you said today. I think it's so important to adopt certain habits and implement them in your daily lives to really cut back costs. And also, it's very relatable in Korea too. It doesn't feel like our salaries is keeping up with the pace that the prices are rising, which just can be frustrating. But I think adopting these habits into our lives can be really helpful. So yeah, thank you so much for sharing your tips today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So we just heard how young people in Japan are navigating rising prices, from cutting back daily costs to embracing new saving trends and sharing practical tips. But saving doesn't always mean giving everything up. So how are millennials and Gen Z still finding small joys despite tight budgets, Ki?
Sure. So what's interesting is how the MZ generation is redefining the term consumption. Rather than making large, committed, long-term purchases like homes or cars, many are choosing to opt out of those commitments altogether. Instead, they're finding small satisfaction, more immediate form of spending, things like 빵지순례 or bakery pilgrimages, or what's often referred as a 제철 core or seasonal core experiences. In other words, it's about choosing a highly concentrated, high-impact moments of joy and enjoyment, even if they are brief. We see a similar pattern in lifestyle as well. For example, even if they are not drinking alcohol, many still want that atmosphere, so the non-alcohol market is getting bigger, and the phenomenon reflects move away from ownership or obligations towards it's moving toward the experience and emotional value.
So we're actually going to talk about seasonal core tomorrow on the show, so tune in if you're interested. So that's really interesting. Instead of big lifetime purchases, they're choosing small but high impact experiences. So it's less about ownership and more about emotional return on spending. And beyond what they buy, even how they evaluate products is changing. So how are young people becoming, I guess, smarter, more analytical consumers, Brooke?
Well, I think our guest really exemplified that with how she was saying, make a list before you go shopping. Another tip I would say is don't go shopping while hungry, because then you might make more impulsive purchases. But yeah, the trend is what's happening is that people aren't just looking for the cheapest option anymore, and they are just smarter when they're shopping. They're trying to really understand and digest the price structure behind the product. So why are they priced the way they are? They want to find items that offer real value without having to pay for those unnecessary markups. And that's why things like high quality dupes or private brand products from retailers or even well-made items from smaller companies are becoming more popular. It's not all about just the brand name anymore. It's about the quality. And people often share their discoveries online, and that has become a new kind of consumption culture among younger generations, where people like our guest are sharing their money-saving tips with each other. So the priority has become more about, being frugal and helping each other be frugal.
Right. So it's not just about frugality, it's strategic consumption. So young people aren't just chasing this cheapest option, but the most rational value. And this brings us to a bigger question in this high cost era. So what does truly wise spending, Ki, in your opinion, look like today?
So know your limit, know how much you can actually spend, and stop looking at the social media because you end up comparing your life with others, but then don't compare your life with others because your life is just as beautiful. It's important to save money, but at the same time, it's important to enjoy your life as well. Enjoy your moment. Small things in your everyday life can change how much you could appreciate your life as a whole. So it's all about the harmony, I think.
I like what you said about social media because I feel like in this era, it's so easy to compare yourself.
Yeah.
Right.
This person's having this kind of wedding, they're living in this kind of home. It's so easy to compare, but don't fall into that. So do you have anything to add?
Yeah, and a lot of times those social media posts aren't even real, right?
Right.
You're not seeing the real life. So definitely remind yourself of that. And harmony, I think, is a beautiful word. Another word I'd like to say is balance. I think that's really the key. It's important to save money, but if you cut back too much, then you feel too restricted, too limited, and you feel like you can't really enjoy your life either. I love Labubus. If I want to buy one, I'm going to buy one, but don't go crazy with it. And also, instead of worrying about what other people think about what you have, it's better to spend intentionally on the things that truly matter to you while being more careful with the rest. I think finding that balance is hard. It's not easy, but that is the smartest way to manage spending in economical times like these.
So in times like this, in a time of rising prices, saving money is no longer just about cutting back. It's about choosing wisely. From skipping large-scale traditions to embracing small, meaningful spending, priorities are clearly shifting. And ultimately, smart consumption may be less about how much you spend and more about what you truly value. And that brings us to the end of today's episode of News Generation. But News Gen will be back tomorrow at 10:30 a.m. Korea time with more stories and discussions. A big thanks to Brooke.
I had a lot of fun today. Thank you.
Thank you for coming in, and also Ki.
Thank you.
And to our viewers, thank you so much for watching. And hopefully this reminded you that in times like this, smart spending can be the new luxury.
Ooh, I like that.
We are
News Generation.